Hi, it's Ileana here, and today I am going to be answering viewers' questions. So it's a Q&A session, and this Q&A is in regards to ET-DNA infusions, hybrids, and other things having to do with extraterrestrials. So here we go. What transformations or process were you submitted to when you acknowledged being a hybrid, and was it of your own will? I've always known that I was an ET human hybrid. I did not submit to any processes or transformations for this to happen, except my ET DNA started taking over more so than the human DNA when I was learning shamanism and white light Wicca magic. Because the more you work with frequencies, the more you work with spirituality and healing, if you are an ET human hybrid, your ET DNA is enhanced and it evolves further, and my ET DNA is a higher percentage than it was because I chose to energetically enhance myself. And the more I worked with frequencies, and also I've done astral travel, I've done psychic development, healing, all of those things play a factor in enhancing ET DNA. The more you use your abilities, the more you evolve. So that's the only transformation that has happened with that. I'm half L species, EL. I'm half L and half human, and a few other things in between, but it's mostly predominant hybrid L DNA that's in me, to answer that question. And I was born this way. I was born an L human hybrid. So was it of my own free will? I think it was, because I was born this way. And I like the changes that have happened with the evolution of the L DNA in me. How can you recognize with certainty that the beings or entities you deal with are benevolent? How can I recognize entities, whether they're benevolent or not, is because I read the frequencies and energies of all living beings and matter in the universe. So when I read the frequencies, I can tell if an entity is benevolent or not. I don't work with entities that are not of the highest light. I only work with benevolent entities. I can read their frequencies, their energy patterns, and that's how I can tell whether they're benevolent or not, or something in between. When you state that you do not choose who will show up and in which number, do you suggest that entities of any race could show up for ET-DNA infusions? When I say that I have no control over not being able to choose who will show up and in which number, I'm not even talking about ET-DNA infusions. I was talking about the Solipsi Raw, how many of them choose to show up to do energy healings with the healer in conjunction with the healer. That's what I meant by who shows up and in which number. Sometimes 2 Solipsi Raw show up, sometimes 3, sometimes 5, 10, or 20, because they work in healing councils. That's what I meant. And no, I'm not suggesting that entities of any race could show up for ET-DNA infusions. When I do ET-DNA infusions, I select a specific species of a race, and that's whose DNA I tap into, a certain percentage of DNA, to do an ET-DNA infusion for someone who I'm working with. So I'm not suggesting that different types of entities or any race will show up. It's specifically chosen which race ET-DNA infusion will happen. If somebody asks for Arcturian DNA infusion, then it will be specifically Arcturian DNA infusion and nothing else. No other race or entities will show up. It will be purely Arcturian DNA infusion. That's what it'll be of that race, what their frequency of DNA is. And it's not even them showing up. It's tapping into their genetic frequencies to infuse you with their DNA. They could be watching or they might not be. And I usually do ask them for permission if I could do their DNA ET infusion for humans. So I do ask for that, but they don't physically have to be present for you to be infused with their DNA. I tap into their Arcturian collective of their DNA as a whole species, and you get an infusion, a percentage of an infusion from their race, of what their qualities of their race are and what they specialize in their abilities and health improvements or whatever they do. So one ET species and race at a time. When alien healers show up for an ET-DNA infusion sessions, are they all of the same race, or can there be a mix-up of different races? So it's alien healers show up to do energy healing sessions. They don't show up to do ET-DNA infusion sessions. I tap into the collective of whatever species you will be getting an ET-DNA infusion from. I don't specifically tap into any number of alien healers, and they don't show up. Their frequencies and energies are here from their DNA collective to do the infusion, but they don't have to be here energetically for that to happen. And no, there cannot be a mix-up of different races. Again, it's one species DNA ET infusion at a time. One at a time. No mix-ups. You don't get Arcturian and Pleiadian, Andromedan, L infusion all at once. That's a lot of different DNA mixed together, and I don't do that. It's one infusion from one species at a time in one session, because that's too much DNA and that's too many frequencies. I don't mix up different frequencies of different species all in one go. I don't do that. So it's one species at a time, one particular species whose DNA will be complementary to your body, to your human frequency, for whatever that's needed to enhance your psychic abilities, your IQ, your health, your strength, whatever it is that's being enhanced from the qualities of that DNA collective from that ET species. That is what you get. If Arcturian is chosen, their collective DNA from their species, that's the qualities you would get from Arcturians, but not from Arcturians, Pleiadians, and other species all at once. So it's one ET-DNA infusion at a time per session per one species. If not, does one get infused with different sorts of ET-DNA, and what are the consequences? Again, only one ET-DNA infusion at a time during the session, and from only one species DNA collective. So there wouldn't be any consequences because I don't mix up different ET-DNA infusions all at once. I don't do that. I don't do that, so there is no consequences to it. What are the maximum sessions of ET-DNA infusions allowable for humans, or is it only one session in a human lifetime? There is no specific number of how much ecDNA infusions are allowable for humans. What is important is percentages. What does your body need? It might need only 5% of Arcturian DNA coming from their collective, or it might need 25%. It all really depends on your body. And more than one session could be done in a human lifetime, but again, it really depends on your body and what it needs. What kind of ET race DNA infusion it needs, and how much percentage of it. Sometimes you will need 2 infusions of Arcturian DNA, sometimes 3, sometimes 1. Again, it all depends on you. And yes, other ecDNA infusions from other species can also be done a couple of weeks or a couple of months down the road when you've fully integrated the first ecDNA infusion, when it's coexisting side by side with your own human DNA. So if it's integrating properly and coexisting correctly, then you can get other species ecDNA infusions as time goes on in separate sessions down the road. What about reptilians and other species with cloaking abilities? Can you detect their real identity? Yes, I can detect reptilians' identities. Even if they have cloaking abilities, I can sense their auras. I can sense their frequencies. I can sense their electromagnetic field, the literal frequency of their soul being. So yes, I can tell what their real identity is. I've done it a lot before, and I still do it. When I make contact with ETs, the first thing I scan is their frequencies to see who they are and if they're identifying themselves as what they claim to be based on their frequencies. In your own case, have you experienced negative side effects with the infusions of ecDNA? No, I've never experienced negative side effects with the infusions of ecDNA. It actually helps me in my health to improve. So I've never had any negative side effects. But I can take in a lot of different frequencies. Healing frequencies, DNA infusions. For me, I'm sensitive to frequencies, but I'm also very receptive to receiving healing frequencies in DNA infusions because I'm half L. I have that DNA in me, so I've never had negative consequences or side effects from that. Have you ever had any of your own clients reporting negative side effects from ecDNA infusions? No, I've never had clients reporting negative side effects from ecDNA infusions because I always try to make sure that the percentage of ecDNA infusions that they're getting is properly balanced. Again, it's percentage levels. I am not going to infuse you with 100% of another race's DNA. I do it in specific quantities to what the person needs for their body and their soul to be in good health and alignment, physically, emotionally, and on the soul level. So I do the ecDNA infusions in different percentages according to what the person needs. I never infuse 100% of something into somebody because that's a lot of frequency, that's a lot of DNA, and that's a lot of energy that comes with a particular species DNA collective. I balance it out correctly for percentages. I do a medical intuitive energy body scan on whoever I'm working with to make sure, again, that they get the right balance and percentage of ecDNA that's being infused into them. side by side coexisting with their human DNA, so that you actually feel good health-wise and energy-wise, and you're not overloaded with too much ET-DNA or not enough of it. There is a percentage balance that I do during the infusion to make sure you're safe and healthy. If so, could you share those side effects, if any? Again, I haven't had anybody report any side effects, if any, so I can't speak to that because there haven't been any issues so far with that. Are the side effects temporary or irreversible? Again, there hasn't been any temporary or irreversible side effects. What I can speak about is that the ET-DNA infusions could be temporary, depends on how much percentage is infused, or it could be permanent if a higher percentage is infused. It all depends on the purpose. If you want the ET-DNA infusion to be temporary, I'll make it temporary. If you want it to be permanent, I'll make it permanent. I balance out the percentage ratios on if it will be temporary or permanent and irreversible. I can speak to that side of it, how it's done. If you had a choice, would you return to not being a hybrid? No, I like being an ETL hybrid, so no, I wouldn't return to not being a hybrid, because being an L hybrid is what gives me my psychic abilities. It's what gives me the ability to do energy healing, to sense frequencies, and to be able to contact other ETs telepathically. I would never give up those abilities. I like the L hybrid DNA that's in me and what it allows me to do psionically with my abilities. It enhances those abilities and those qualities in me. So no, I would never return to not being a hybrid. It's part of me. I was born with it, so I don't want to give it back. I'm quite happy with it. So, if you do have hybrid DNA and some qualities of whatever race you're a hybrid of, if those are positive qualities, why give them back? That doesn't make any sense to give something back or go back if it works for you. If it's not working for you and not of a positive outcome, then maybe that hybrid DNA needs to be removed from the body. If you were born that way, it might need to be either frequency, polarity attuned to make it more cohesive and balanced with your human DNA to make it work in your body, or it needs to be removed with psychic surgery completely for your body if it's not balanced correctly and not coexisting with your human DNA. So there's many different factors for being an ET human hybrid, whether it works or not, whether you need it or not. In my case, the L hybrid DNA works cohesively and in tune with my side-by-side. Actually, well, it's together. It's together, the L DNA. It's together with my human DNA. It's overlapped and interlaced by now. It's just taking over more of the human DNA. And I don't mind that. I like what I am and I like what I can do with it. So thank you so much and namaste.